Hello and welcome to this wonderful presentation by Joseph Mercieca. Joseph is a design, researcher, and accessibility consultant for his own organization called Another Concept. Um, Joe, it's a pleasure to have you, and I'm always looking forward to talking with you about all different kinds of subject matter, design, and geopolitics, and things of that matter. Um, by all means, give us a taste of what you're gonna present.
Certainly. So first and foremost, Joaquin, thank you very much for inviting me here. So it's been a pleasure being around. And right, so just to give a little bit of an intro. So yes, I'm a researcher, designer, and also an accessibility consultant. I'm also certified by the Design Professionals of Canada, an association of practice, as you can tell, based in Canada. And prior to everything, I have extensive experience working as a researcher and product designer with companies like Fit Analytics, which was momentarily part of Snap Inc., F-Secure Corporation, a cybersecurity company from the Nordics, and WebTrends, a pioneer in web optimization and analytics. Now, I will be talking today about accessibility and compliances. I may also scratch a little bit about AI and accessibility. And on that part, I've been also advocating accessibility and inclusive design since 2018, which became part of my mission statement. And to add further, and I will end here when it comes to intros, I also worked as a learning facilitator, providing assisted learning to 10-year-old kids with ADHD, autism, and dyslexia back in 2008. Right, just a moment. Right, so I'm gonna go through what I have to present today, but first I'm gonna start with a bit of context. So first and foremost, as technologies are becoming ubiquitous, people, including those with disabilities, are increasingly relying on those to manage daily tasks like finances, emailing, even seeking assistance. And consequently, technologies are evolving so rapidly that accessibility and fundamentals like ethics are often deprioritized. As a result, barriers are unknowingly introduced in technologies which exacerbate disabilities, such as when an individual is unable to operate an item for could be poor user experience, lack of functionality, and so on. And that leads to I would say the biggest question: what is accessibility? Now, if you go on Google, you're going to find a lot of definitions about accessibility. I'm going to stick to one of my favorites, which is derived from the social model of disability. So basically, accessibility, which is also abbreviated as AW1Y, represents a mismatch between systems and human interaction due to barriers impeding system usage by individuals. Hence, the mission of accessibility is to level equity by eliminating barriers, resulting in a match between people and systems. Now, here I included a bit of a basic example about a mismatch versus a mismatch. So, starting with the first example, we have a blind person. Now, to that blind person, we are administering them with a standard book, or better, a book written in standard text. So as a result, we have an obvious mismatch, and therefore we have a barrier which is enforced simply because a blind person cannot read a standard book written in standard text. Now, contrastingly, we have another scenario where we have a blind person, but this time we are giving that person a book written in Braille text. Now, in this regard, we have an obvious match, and therefore we have a person who is enabled to read. Therefore, the barrier is eliminated. In this regard, the person can read by touching the Braille text, which is like elevated dots on a printed paper. This is so long, they can understand the Braille language. Now, coming down to estimates, I don't really have exact estimates because these are a little bit hard to find, but I did my best to pull out some figures. So basically, according to WHO, this is data from 2022, there is about 16% of the global population with a disability. Jumping to the United States, according to the Center of Disease Control and so on, there is about 27%, an estimated 27% of the US population. Similarly, can be said about the European population, again 27%. Now, these figures, they keep changing and increasing. Therefore, as tech innovators, we have a duty to deliver compliant solutions that everyone can use effectively, regardless of their limitations such as disabilities or age and so on, thereby ensuring equity. Now, coming down to some guiding principles. So basically, to ensure equity and inclusion, solutions must be therefore designed by adhering with 4 core principles encapsulating accessibility. So these are abbreviated as PUR, which stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So when it comes to perceivable, basically users, including us, should identify content and UI elements via our senses, such as touch, visual, auditory, and so on. Next, we have operable. In this regard, users should be able to operate the product via controls, navigation, buttons, and other interactive elements. Understandable, which is about, that functions, features, and content should be understandable and easy to memorize. And lastly, it goes to robust. So when it comes to robust, the best way I can exemplify that is, imagine you have a website. So the website should operate successfully via, say, a desktop utility like a laptop, but also through mobile phones. And these should also be compatible with assistive technologies such as screen readers, keyboards, and so on. Now, coming down to assistive technologies, first and foremost, people with special needs, aka disabilities, rely on these technologies to perform tasks that might otherwise be difficult or even impossible. Now, examples include, like I mentioned, screen readers, but also braille devices, adaptive switches, mouthpieces, and nowadays even smart AI apps like Be My Eyes, Seeing AI, and so forth. Therefore, the digital solutions we design and create, such as websites, applications, even conversational interfaces, must be built to fully operate with these assistive technologies. And also, we must bear in mind that as we speak, assistive technologies may not be fully assistive after all with novel utilities. For example, to date, accessing and navigating chatbots via keyboard is still almost impossible, depending on the chatbot and the creator, of course. Now, one more thing. As things are nowadays, it's worth mentioning that assistive technologies are poised to improve significantly thanks to groundbreaking innovations like, of course, AI, but also regards to brain-computer interfaces, such as recent events with Neuralink. What happened is probably a lot of you know already, but there was the first test, and there was a person who tried Neuralink and was able to play chess using his brain successfully. Now, jumping to compliances. So basically, there are various inclusive and accessibility policies which are enacted across the globe, subject to the country. And depending on the country, there could also be provincial laws or state laws, such as in Canada and the United States. Here, I included a few examples. You can find more online on w3.org. Now, when it comes to these compliances, most of them are derived from the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, WCAG, which you can find also on w3.org. Now, there is also the long-awaited European Accessibility Act. So, in other words, okay, this will come into effect on June 28, 2025. Now, thing is, companies operating in the European Union must achieve compliance by that very date. However, companies with 10 people or less are exempt from this requirement. Therefore, it is obviously clear that accessibility must be prioritized to comply with enacted legislations, ensuring continued business operations and success. Now, coming down to establishing accessibility practices. So that can be a little bit of a challenge. So basically, thing is persuading stakeholders into embedding inclusive and accessibility practices can be challenging. Now, point is, often stakeholders treat accessibility as an afterthought, leading to lower prioritization. Now, reflecting on my very personal experience, often stakeholders cite expense. This has to do with retrofitting already deployed solutions. And that is unfortunately true because that can be very costly. Then there is the part about user base. For some reason, stakeholders often argue that people with disabilities only account for 2 to 5% of their own customers or user base. I often ended up encountering this very figure, 2 to 5%. And then there is reluctance, such as I had a recent case where I got told, like, okay, my product is working fine. I am making money. Why should I upgrade, achieving compliance with my product? So there is that. Now, coming down to establishing something in an organization. So there are two ways for that. So the first one is about having a dedicated accessibility team to take responsibility for implementing and maintaining standards within the organization. And at the same time, they can also contribute to user research by researching people with disabilities to gather different perspectives. On the other hand, another method is by which is called the cross-functional integration. So basically, imagine you have product teams, development teams, marketing teams. Now, in these teams, you can embed accessibility experts to make sure that accessibility considerations are prioritized in every phase of the development. Now, talking about a few success cases, this is also something I tend to do when I try to onboard stakeholders into considering accessibility. So basically, one thing I stumbled upon recently is a report by Accenture, which is dated November 2023. So basically, they discovered that companies that drove accessibility practices reported increase in revenue, net income, and profit. Now, I also took the liberty to include 5 examples here, such as like how companies promote accessibility and inclusion. So here I included examples from Barclays Bank, AT&T, Intel, GitHub, IBM, and so on. Of course, there are more examples. Thing is, I can only fit so much in the slides. And now we have I would say the million-dollar question, which is about how can AI level accessibility? So point is, the intersection of AI and accessibility is still, to a certain extent, new, not so new, depending on how one sees that. Now, the intersection is inevitable, and as we all know, AI is here to stay. And now, coming down to the topic, basically AI can enhance accessibility in numerous ways, such as, AI can address mismatches between systems and humans by leveraging modalities, making people of all abilities more efficient when using systems. And also, AI can learn and predict individuals' behaviors and respond to their needs accordingly. So coming down to modalities, just to give an example, let's imagine a text-based messenger. So, when you use your keyboard to type a message. Nowadays, we can also use voice to type a message down. So, if I have a disability with my arms, I can use my voice instead. Or otherwise, I can just send a voice text instead. Moving further, AI can also help through navigation assistance. So basically, applications like Ira, Be My Eyes, and so on can help people with visual or cognitive impairments. We have speech recognition and voice assistants. So basically, tech like Siri, Alexa, and so on, since they support hands-free, that can help people with mobility impairments thanks to voice commands. We have image and object recognition. Again, applications like Seeing AI and Google Lens can help people with visual impairments by having these applications telling them about their surroundings, like where they are and so on. Moving further, we have smart home automation. Okay, this is not so new. It's part of the Internet of Things. So basically, smart home devices can support voice, and these can help people with mobility issues to control certain aspects of their homes. And lastly, which is becoming a bit of a trend nowadays, we have assistive robots. So basically, AI-powered robots can help by performing tasks, fetching items, providing companionship, and even assisting people with daily activities. Now, on that note, I don't mean to be the harbinger of skepticism. Um, Point to that is that innovators rarely speak about the possible side effects robots may have on vulnerable people, which may result in the what is termed as the uncanny valley effect. So basically, this term is quite ancient. It was established back in the 1970s by a Japanese roboticist. So the uncanny valley effect coins the unsettling feeling some people experience when they deal with quasi-human figures, like mannequins, dolls, even humanoid robots. And that leads people into experiencing discomfort, uneasiness, fear, and so on. So point to that is, in my opinion, one must be mindful when assigning these robots to people with vulnerabilities such as psychological or even physiological, because chances are these could develop some kind of phobia in the long run. Hence, more research and investigations are needed. Now, jumping down to the very conclusion, I'm gonna end with a quote from AT&T. So yes, so AI is bridging the accessibility gap, but still has ways to go. We must bear in mind that AI can still make mistakes, including hallucinations, or even have biases. For instance, AI might not understand different accents or languages, which may be challenging for some people. And to end, so if you guys have any queries about accessibility audits, ways to achieve compliance for your product or organization, please feel free to reach me out on LinkedIn or and that will be it. Thanks.
We had a comment come in from Cecilia that she's saying, I don't remember who said this, but I like to parrot this thing I have heard when talking about accessibility. Some people say your edge case is somebody else's entire life. So,
Okay,
yeah.
just I'm gonna read that out. I have what is Windows on my ground. I had to pair this thing. I have heard. I'm trying to understand the phrase when talking about accessibility with
So
those that might
I
have.
I
Go on.
interpret I interpret it as why do we have to comply with ADA for ADA compliant navigation, but someone's blind and they can interface with a regular website? It serves to have ADA compliance because it's their whole life. And I think I had a conversation with somebody else as well where we talked about basic human rights. The right to bank is a basic human right, so you can exchange money. You need to be able to interface with a banking application, whether you're blind, whether you're mute, whether you're mentally impaired, whether you speak a different language. Any kind of modification to your native biology needs to be adapted to this kind of function.
Okay, that's a bit broad, but I will do my best to answer that. So basically, way to put it. So this is about addressing and respecting fundamental rights for people who, well, for people who can only operate so much because of certain limitations, to put it that way. Now, when it comes to these regulations, or better, like kind of why should we follow ADA and so on, I may not be able to answer that accordingly simply because people have different opinions and takes, and I'm also based in Europe. And like in my case, if I have to say like, why should you do that? Nowadays, it's easier for me to say like, we have the regulations coming in. If you don't meet the deadline, XYZ can happen. Um, in addition to watchdogs. Now, these watchdogs, they exist. They keep an eye on big companies, so they make sure that that other companies are being compliant in that regard. Now, then there is also how to say respecting basic rights, because in the long run, if you can make sure, sorry, let's say if your product can be used by wider audiences, that's going to be good for you, because that means okay, you have the revenue aspect, but at the same time, you are also where should I put that, you are also promoting the importance of being inclusive, and because of that, it can also serve as an example, as a role model for others, if that can answer it. That's a rather good question, I must say, and I would need to think on that. But then again, like I said, there is a bit of the cultural element. Like in Europe, we see things a little bit differently, and nowadays with these compliances coming into effect, it's like we have no choice but to follow them.
So let me ask you this: these compliance efforts are being enforced.
Mhm.
Good, it's a requirement. It helps society. But what about the organizations that don't have the resources to go and do that? Whether it's hiring a consultant or paying for a platform, or they don't have the trained staff skills or experience to go and procure these people or these solutions. What is your perspective on that? How can that be met, and how would you approach it?
That's a very good question and might not have a very solid answer to that. I mean, the easier way is to hire people. Now, assuming a case where a company might not be able to meet certain things because of budgeting and so on. Um, Now, if you Google for WCAG, you will find the guidelines there. So basically, these guidelines are broken down, like it tells, like, okay, for example, let's take a website. Images should be carefully labeled. That can be easily done. If you have a website, there is a thing, okay, called ARIA semantics. It's a dev thingy. This is to improve compatibility with screen readers, keyboards, and assistive technologies. So there are instructions, and developers can easily follow these. So this might not be the ideal way, but it is good enough for a small organization um, uh, to meet the desired compliance. To put it frankly, that would be, it's called level AA. And nowadays there are also automated plugins for to run these audits. Now, again, I don't want to say just use a plugin and you are done. I mean, it's not the ideal way, but it can get you only so far, and just enough to at least achieve, let's say, maybe 80 to 90 to well, about 80% conformance level, which would be okay. But again, it's better than having something than having nothing at all. That's a good question, Hokin, eh? I never thought about that.
Sorry to put you on the spot, man.
Yeah, you did. You succeeded. Thank you.
I said I wasn't gonna throw any curveballs.
Ah, you did.
Well, I think that's a reasonable, way to scaffold the effort, especially when you're resource constrained and you might not be aware of everything that you need. And I think also you said that the way that these regulations are enforced is in a stepwise. They're not gonna just roll everything out at once, are they?
No, no, no. I mean, for example, in Europe, I mean, that has been into discussion for several years. So the that deadline was released, I believe, 3 years ago. So it should have given time for a lot of companies. Like recently, I dealt with two companies for possible work. I'm not going to mention, of course, who, but one company said, when I asked the question, they said, like, yes, we are actually working hard and so on, just to make sure we meet the deadline next year. So they are a little bit in a kind of in a marathon style, the way I got even from the voice. Another company, okay, the person I spoke to, he knew from little to nothing about what accessibility stands for and so on. He was rather chill, but he said, like, we have a we have established an accessibility committee, so they can take care of making sure that we are on the right track. So I didn't ask further. Chances are they hired people internally, and to make sure that the deadline is respected. And also recalling one company I worked with, we also went through the similar stages, like people who knew stuff about accessibility. We joined in together, and we started working on voicing the importance of accessibility to key stakeholders. Um, and that was it. I mean, it is a process. It's not going to happen immediately. You have to keep on voicing until people see um, the importance of being inclusive. This, I mean, some would see it more from a monetary level, like that's gonna give me more money and so on. But others would see it also from a human point of view, like ensuring equity for everybody. So yeah.
Thank you very much also for bringing up the usage of generative AI as an interface for people that have impairments. If you need to adapt information from one medium to another, it really helps to have some sort of interpretive layer, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can only say so much because this is an area that is still being explored. Like companies like Microsoft, they are doing amazingly well. So, what I can suggest in that regard is you can also go on YouTube and find about Microsoft AI accessibility and so on. Like for example, Microsoft, yeah, cognitive AI or Microsoft Azure. I don't know which is what exactly. I think it's Microsoft Azure. They have something for accessibility also within their system. I haven't explored that further though. But yeah, the thing is, this is a recent intersection, and so much remains to be explored. So at my end, I can only answer so much. But like I mentioned, some things are still, how to say, like, okay, I mentioned about assistive technologies, like using assistive technologies on these novel applications. It's still a little bit difficult instead of saying impossible. So there is that. So chances are that things will improve as time goes by. So yeah,
Well, thank you, Joe. One last question.
sure.
Any last pointers that you can provide somebody who's navigating the space or wants to enter into this area of research and design that is human centered, that keeps at the forefront of the mind accessibility?
Good question. I mean, okay, forefront to accessibility. Okay, one easy answer to that, even though it's not easy at all, I could easily recommend a book by Konstantin Stefanadis. It's called The Universal Design. I don't remember the full title. I can just paste the link in the channel. It's a rather expensive book, though. Yeah, I think it's close to 200 euros, but it's a very good book that tackles design, research, universal design, accessibility, pretty much everything at one go. And it's not a small book either. Yeah, other than that, yeah, I could say yeah, thinking about possible sources, because I could think about IAAP, the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. Site Improve, they also have a lot of good sources to start learning, but this is mainly accessibility. But again, accessibility also covers usability. Um, That's all I can think of. I mean, I think the best way is if people want resources. I mean, you can also reach me out. I'm on LinkedIn, and I will do my best to compile a list. Because, yeah, I mean, nowadays the way I keep in touch is I just use search engine and I keep on reading articles to see about recent evolutions and so on, thanks to these technologies. Because point is, what was applicable in the past may not be applicable today because interfaces are changing. For example, probably 20 years ago, we never dreamt of using voice to control systems. Now we can use voice, and now we need new regulations, or sorry, new principles, to put it frankly. I don't want to say regulations or design guidelines. So there is that. So even if I give examples, they're going to be partially outdated, simply because these keep on improving. I also mentioned WCAG, the Web Consortium of Accessibility Guidelines. Last year, I think it was last year, there was the version 2 point something released. But at the same time, there is also version 3, which has been in the pipeline for quite a few years. And the version 3 is supposed to be the mother of all guidelines, because they are being curated by people from Microsoft, Apple, Google, and other big tech companies. So they aim to create the ultimate guideline. And these companies are also behind these big technologies like, AI and so on. Yeah, and money too.
Well,
Yeah,
Joe, thank you very much for your time, and
thank you.
thank you everybody for attending this presentation. We'll take a 9-minute break, and then we'll be on to the next one. So, see you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye.